portfolio that completely aligns with their goals. If you want to find out more about that, head on over to www.ncrealestate.co.uk, where you will find some really awesome information to get you started. Today, I have another incredible guest, and I have been so excited about this conversation because it's right up my street. I've got Louise Cartwright, who is a high performance and money coach with me. Hi, Louise.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
Great. So one of the big things that investors like you always come and ask me about is where you find the money this, financial problems that. Oh, I can't get started investing in property because my money situation isn't right, or I don't know where to find money. So there are so many excuses. So I have got Louise to come on and speak to me today because I want to talk all about money blocks, how to find money, how to be more courageous with it. And I think just have a really, really great money conversation. So I'm very excited. So to start off with, Louise, let's start with your background. How did you get into being a money coach?
I was really bad with money, to be quite frank. I'd never had any. As I grew up, I was very much a spender. So what I earned, I spent. It really came to a head in 2011, 2012. I accidentally became a business owner. And I say accidentally, I just decided to go and train as a personal trainer because I had a pretty crappy job, and just to see what would happen. And as it turned out, it kind of evolved, and I set up a small studio. But during that time, what I realized was that I didn't feel good around money. I didn't like to ask for it. I'd let clients leave without paying. I didn't like, people said, how much do you charge? I'd get like cotton wool mouth, and I felt guilty when I did take their money. And then I used to sort of feel like I had to kind of constantly be giving. And it just didn't feel good. And even though, I was making a lot more money than I'd ever perceived that I could, I'd left a job where I was earning £8 an hour in an office. I'd been a single parent before that, on benefits and all that. And I found myself running this studio and earning sort of up to £5,000 a month. So I thought, why am I not ecstatically happy? Why am I drinking huge amounts of wine every night to cope with the stress? I was depressed. And I'd made myself believe there was something wrong with me because I'd suffered with depression before. I thought, clearly, Louise, you just got, ideas above your station. You should just go back to your office job. And I can't really remember what it was that made me start thinking that there was something different, but I came across something called Sacred Money Archetype Coaching. And I became a coach in that. And that was the first time I realized that money blocks were an actual thing. It wasn't just me being useless. And that kind of set me off on another tangent. And I ended up doing my NLP coaching. And literally, it was like somebody gave me a new brain. And I had this massive revelation. I started talking about money. And it was really interesting to watch how other business owners reacted to my new conversations. And it just became a huge passion of mine, where I thought, if I'm going to go out and I'm going to, put everything I've got into running a business that I love, I do want to have a huge amount of abundance, and I want everybody else to have the same. And it became a love, really. And that's how I got here.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, I've got so many questions. Okay,
go ahead. I love to talk.
Let's start. What are money blocks and how does it hold people back?
So money blocks really are just sort of a physical manifestation of a subconscious belief system. So, we've all heard our parents or our friends saying things like, money doesn't grow on trees, just be grateful for what you've got. Don't be greedy, all those kind of things, don't ask for things. That was something that I got brought up with. Don't waste money. We can't afford that. So obviously what I've learned over the last couple of years of doing this work is that, yes, it manifests in business owners with things like, over delivery. So constant sort of feeling like they've got to earn every penny. So they'll completely over deliver. They'll undercharge. They've got very few boundaries around their time, so they might give a lot of their time away for free. But particularly as well in this social media world, constantly giving away free content, feeling like they've got to earn it.
Yeah.
But the other the bigger story of that is that because money blocks really are just about you and not about money, it tends to be to do with how you feel about yourself.
Okay.
So it'll be around the expectations that you have for yourself. So one of the ways that I see it manifesting is that so many business people can't dream big because they don't actually believe deep down it's possible for them.
Mhm.
So they'll think about visions and dreams that are just really just a few steps away from their current reality. And they'll say things like, I just need another few clients. I just want to make ends meet. Rather than they wouldn't think about, I don't know, the yacht, in Monte Carlo, or the fast car, or the Louboutins. Or I'm not saying that's for everybody, but the whole idea is it really limits their ability to think about a life that's much much bigger than they've got now.
Yeah.
Um, it can lead to all kinds of things. So they play very small in their business, and they won't invest. And equally so, I've worked with millionaires who can't keep money. They earn it and they spend it. So, literally to the stage where they've got a business or they've got a job going and they can't get off the hamster wheel because they're spending so much, they have to keep earning it.
Wow.
And this is where the archetypes come in, because each archetype has got its kind of own challenges. So you've got archetypes that are like that will just keep spending.
Mhm.
You've got archetypes like the accumulator, who are like the Scrooge, and so they don't want to spend and they limit the growth of their business because they won't invest.
Yeah.
you and then you've got people like the ruler. I'm a ruler, and we have an inability to sort of turn off. We work 24/7 and we keep moving the money goalposts. So it's effectively just, it manifests in not having a great relationship with money, how you earn it, how much you have, how confident you are to talk about it, whether
Mhm.
it's in a certain, whether it's in a charging capacity, or saying to your friend, oh yeah, my next goal is like 10 million, and then they kind of look at you and think you're greedy. And ultimately what that results in my opinion, is quite a limited vision of your future.
Yeah. Because you wonder exactly how that can come, how you can
Hmm.
find that. Um,
Yeah.
and that's often something that I really experience with my property investors, is they
Hmm.
can come to me and they say, "Well, I would love to earn, I don't know, £10,000 a month through property,"
Hmm.
but never really believing it or never aiming for that property that would be able to give them that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it is just, I kind of liken it to the fact that as we're growing up, as we grow up, and we're sort of programmed. So effectively, we're robots between the ages of 0 and 7, and everything just kind of gets implanted into our brains.
Mhm.
It's effectively like somebody giving you a pair of glasses that distorts your vision.
Yeah.
And until we can start working on our mindset and get to the stage where we've got 20/20 vision, there is no way we can see a vision of our life like that.
Mhm.
It just it's just it's always that sort of thing. Oh, that's okay for somebody else. And that's why, money and mindset is just such a huge topic for
Yes.
me, anyway.
Yes, and it comes, and your money mindset, I find, and this is my own experience just being reflective now,
Hmm.
comes from years of damage around money. I
Absolutely.
I remember thinking about, actually, why didn't I like talking about money? Why couldn't I make money? And I do not profess to be an expert here, which is why you're here.
Hmm.
But I remember when I was 21, 22, first took over a job of head of asset management for a small firm. My boss actually put me in charge of debt collecting on rent arrears, and he
Wow.
would scream at me if I didn't go and
Hmm.
get it. And it made me
Hmm.
very scared about large sums of money, really
Hmm.
scared, because he'd want me to go and knock on doors and collect rent. And I didn't want to do that because I was scared of being shouted at about this amount
Yeah.
of money. And so that
Hmm.
put the fear of God in me about
Hmm.
money. And then what started to happen from there was I didn't like talking about it at all. But I would have to be a money savior. For example, my mum had problems with money for a while, so I just clear a credit card for her, so I didn't have
Hmm.
to deal with it. I didn't have to deal with the stress around it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so for me, reflecting on that, that was very like, that's not great money habits, but it started making money a very scary thing for me. And
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's what other happens to other people, but in different ways, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, just as an example, so I'm one of 5 children. I've got a
Mhm.
twin sister, and our other brothers and sisters are, quite a lot older than us. And, just looking at me and my twin, so obviously we were brought up, at exactly the same time, by the same parents, obviously.
Mhm.
And we was even in the same classroom until we were about 13. So there was nothing, we were literally two peas of a pod. We have very, very different views around money. Mine has changed a lot because I've taught myself to
Yep.
have a much healthier and loving relationship with money. I find that often money and love are intrinsically linked, and some people find that money's a lot less, it can hurt a lot less, and so they'll go for money rather than love. I was always the other way around. I thought love was
Mhm.
better than money,
Mhm.
and now I want it all, but that's another story. But it's that whole thing of, we don't know how we give meaning to things when we're growing up. Um, but because when my parents had our other brothers and sisters, they were really, really quite poor. So
Mhm.
my mum would not eat so that she could feed the 3 children.
Wow.
Now, my eldest brother, from that, decided that he would never have children, because he made that meaning that if you have children, you're going to be poor. And he has gone off and made a very, very good career for himself, and is very, very wealthy.
Yeah.
um, because he was like, I will not be that way.
Mhm.
Whereas for other people, they will repeat that pattern, and so then you get another generation where they're living, well, but not necessarily below the breadline, but certainly not in an arena where they can go and have their best life.
Mhm.
And that's what's so fascinating, is that we're, up until we know different, we're a product of our past. We're a product of what our conditioning was. But the minute we know that, we have the opportunity to then become a product of our consciousness, and we can change what we want to have in our life.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you start beginning that change, because I think a lot of people listening, and I do actually have a predominantly male audience. Actually, I do have a lot of females
Interesting.
that listen, but I also have a lot of males too. I think for a lot of not everybody, but for a lot of a more male audience, this kind of comes across as a bit like woo woo,
Hmm.
spiritual, out there. How is it
Hmm.
relevant? So let's cross that bridge and make this accessible for everybody. Why
Hmm.
why is it relevant no matter what?
Because from my opinion, when you start looking at money,
Mhm.
it's often not standalone. There's often other kind of belief systems that are like ingrained in that. So, like I said, with my older brother, very, very successful, very, very wealthy, and he's got his own sort of meanings around that. So lots of properties, very career orientated.
Yeah.
But it's how you feel about yourself making that money, and it's the meaning that you give to money.
Okay.
So, if you, as an example, if you believe that money is the route to happiness, I would put a warning on that. I think that money can buy lots of things that can create periods of happiness, but ultimately, I don't think it's the thing.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people that go down that route could find themselves a little bit worse to wear, maybe further down the line. But mindset is everything. I mean, this is science. This is cognition. This is that's so far removed from woo, and there is lots of people talking about that now.
Mhm.
But you know, my belief is that if we can create much more of a relaxed conversation around money, so it's not a thing, and we've got lots of people making lots of money, we can make a huge impact in the world, not just in our own lives, but in what we can give back. And I was listening to, who was talking about this the other day, Dean Graciosi, I think, was talking about this in a podcast with Tom Bayou.
Mhm.
And he was talking about, when we make more money and we buy more stuff, whether we're buying houses, cars, furniture, shoes, whatever, we're actually obviously giving back to the economy and providing more jobs.
Yeah.
And we should be totally okay with that.
Yeah.
And if money's in the right hands, it can make a massive difference in the world.
True. Okay. So what is a positive mindset around or what's a healthy money mindset? What would you say that is?
I just think where it's not a thing. I think this is the problem. We make money a thing, so we give it something like, oh, will they deserve it? Well, that's crap, because who's deciding who deserves what? There's nobody up there or out there saying, well, Natasha deserves that amount of money, Louise deserves that amount of money, and
Mm.
that's all rubbish. For me, a positive mindset around money is just expecting to have the lifestyle that you want to have, and then doing what you need to do to go and make that happen.
Yes, because that's important, isn't it? There's the doing aspect of it as well. It's not just the mindset, right?
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into too much woo. I could, but I won't. And again, I will say that it is all backed by science these days. But I'll leave that one for another episode, maybe. But ultimately, what's happening is with your mindset. Your mindset is always creating your behaviour, whether you know it or not.
Mhm.
So most people, 95% of the world's population, are what that they're creating unconsciously. So they're just creating from the subconscious program that I told you about at the beginning.
Yeah.
So they're not even aware of what they're doing. What really changes is when you say, "This is what I want, and this is what I'm going to do to go get that." Right? Because then
Yeah.
you're going to back that you're going to back that thought process up with sort of intentional action. And so for me, moving away from feeling really overwhelmed by my beliefs around money to feeling empowered around money and expecting to have a lot of it and do good with it,
Mhm.
that didn't happen overnight. And it's still sort of, it can still be a work in progress. But I also know that me sitting here doing yoga and visualizing myself on a yacht, it won't park the yacht outside my front of my house. I've got to actually go out and do something with that.
Yeah.
I wish it did work that way, but I haven't come across that just yet.
Yeah. Click your fingers. Oh, there's a yacht.
Yeah, I mean,
Brilliant.
I know a lot of the stuff on YouTube would have you believe that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm sort of bridging that gap. I do believe in alignment, and I do believe in making things manifest through the power of our mind. If you've read Think and Grow Rich, we all
Mhm.
know that. One of
Mhm.
the best books ever. But at the same time, it is taking the action with the positive expectation that you're going to get what you want.
Interesting. See, I've not ever heard anybody actually say it in that kind of straight talking way. So you
That's
do
what I'm known for.
so you start with the mindset and you go take action.
Absolutely. For me, mindset is, I mean, that's my probably my first love, I have to say, is the mindset, because it is so incredibly transformational. It has literally turned my life on a 180.
Mhm.
And without mastering your psychology, I believe you're limiting yourself. Because you can or you can achieve so much more when you decide what's going on in that head of yours. And then you're going to be in that awareness where you can say, okay, I can see this path, or I know I want A, and I know I want to go to B,
Mhm.
and now what are the action steps that I'm responsible for?
Yeah.
So the first one is obviously not doing that out of a space of lack. Like, oh, so I said, with a lot of business owners, well, I really need that extra client, or I need that, that's a really bad space to be in energetically. It's not good.
Mhm.
So it's taking that action, but with the mindset of there is no other option apart from success.
Okay, and how do you turn that around though? Because I get it from a lot of business owners or a lot of people, even property investors are business owners. When you're growing your property
Mhm.
portfolio, that's a business you're building.
Mhm.
And you start from that famine really
Mhm.
because you have to
Yep.
build your whatever it is that you're building, and
Mhm.
that brings your money. And so it can be so tough. And I know when I was starting business, so the first 12 months, my gosh, my mindset was all over the place. It was a bit
Mhm.
like it was literally like sometimes I'd be up and sometimes I'd be down and I never know where I
Mhm.
was going with it. How do you cultivate that even when you're I guess struggling to see how you're even going to get to that next level?
Well, you hire me as a coach. That would be the first thing. um, it's a really, really good question. It's no different to going to the gym and working with a PT and having a program to develop the body you want. It's a consistent workout. So just as an example, I mean, I'm a great believer in NLP and timeline therapy. That had a huge impact on my life.
Yeah.
That was a turnaround point for me. And I read a huge amount of books, and I still do. And just it literally is the first thing is what you go in, what you put in is what you get out.
Right.
So looking at all those people that are achieving already and listening to what they're saying and putting some of that into practice. but ultimately it's when it's becoming aware of the voices in your head don't belong to you. So whatever you're saying, you get a choice which thoughts that you hold on to, or
Okay.
which thoughts do you let go of. And we call it in high performance coaching, when we're talking about our psychological mastery, like, which thoughts will you give weight to, and which thoughts will you make important. So we call it the relative weight of importance and duration.
Hmm.
So people that are suffering with, say, a lot of anxiety, a lot of overwhelm, they're giving a huge amount of weight and attention to thoughts that are not helpful.
Yeah.
And it sounds very simplistic, but I feel confident to say that because I've been there.
Hmm.
I suffered with very, very bad depression after I had my children, and so I've been on both sides, so I know what that's like. And so literally it's becoming aware of when there is thoughts coming in that are not serving you, that are making you say, well, this could fail, or what will people say about you, or what if this goes wrong.
Yeah.
And we've all had that saying that worrying is praying for what you don't want.
Yeah.
And so you get a choice in that moment to say, okay, well, that's not actually helping at all. What's the one thing that I can do right now to move me towards my desired outcome? And it might be making a phone call. It might be, I don't know. It might just be going to speak to a friend and going for a coffee. But
Yeah.
there is something that you can do to move you out of that headspace right now, and you just got to practice that over and over again. And going back to what you said about your first 12 months in business, I'm actually giving a talk this month about business owners and mental health,
Hmm.
because if you don't master that mindset, it's got the capacity to really destroy you and make you give up your business.
Yes. Yes, it has.
Mm,
I know that firsthand. Not that I gave up, but I knew that it got to a point where I was like, look, if you don't get yourself out of this and you don't start being the person you want to be,
yeah,
none of anything is going to happen. And I actually had to get out of my own way, which I didn't
yeah.
understand that phrase for so long. Did
I
not
know.
understand that. But I was like,
Yeah,
right, okay, we will just go on the journey. We're not worrying about the outcome today.
yes,
Today you're going to
yes,
do X, Y, and Z because that outcome will come
yeah.
tomorrow, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whenever
Hmm.
that outcome comes. And I had to do that because otherwise I would have just festered.
Yeah, and that's, unfortunately, that's where most people are. I mean, statistically, most people are living either sort of a caged life where they just feel that they've got no control,
Mhm.
or they're comfortable. And I think, my personal opinion, a lot of comfort is complacency, because it's too much effort to create something different. And then there's that 5% of the population that just go, come hell or high water, I'm gonna do what I was put here to do, or whatever,
Mm.
whatever you might say to yourself. And it takes a huge amount of strength. But it everything that requires effort is going to be worth it if you keep doing that. And that's why so few people do succeed, because that mindset is something you have to train. It's not, no one's just given that mindset. No one. I don't care what I know social media would have you believe that everyone's an overnight success and everyone's really happy working on the beach, you know and in their hut. um but we all know that there's probably been 10 years before that when things have gone wrong, or when they've wanted to hide under their duvet, or when they were broke, or whatever.
Mm.
And that's one of the other reasons why I talk about money so openly, because no one goes from zero to millionaire without a lot of work.
No. So true. So true. And still, and you have to keep cultivating that every day. And so even some
Mhm.
days you'll still want to hide under the bed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Haagen-Dazs days, I call those Haagen-Dazs and duvet days. And I actually think they're very good for the soul, personally.
Okay, that's good. So you're not saying don't do that.
No, I'm saying they should be scheduled in.
Scheduled in.
Make a day
Mandatory.
for that. Yes, absolutely.
So can we talk about some tips to becoming money conscious, but also some real practical tips for anybody who is trying to buy that next property and is thinking, "Oh my gosh, where do I even start with getting financially savvy and feeling good about money?" And
Mhm,
actually some real small tweaks that they can make to their lives, because I'm thinking £0 to say 30,000. I always think as a property investor, you need to have £30,000 somewhere in order to be able to buy
Mhm.
property, that's a good chunk of money to think about, because that will cover everything.
Mhm.
That will cover your 25% deposit on 100 grand property, plus all of the kind of other costs that come with that.
Mhm.
Um, so if we think about it from that point of view, what practical tips could you give to someone who's feeling completely overwhelmed, that they've got zero in the bank and they need to get to that space?
I love that question. And can I just quickly share a very personal story about that?
Yeah.
So, 2008, me and my husband were blacklisted. He had to give keys back on a property. There was and when I say a big sum of negative equity, I mean a big sum of negative equity. So
Wow.
we went blacklisted, and so we had nothing. We didn't own a home. We didn't own a car. We had nothing.
Hmm.
And there was a kind of like an unsaid agreement between us that come hell or high water, when that blacklisting was up in 6 years, we would have the money for a deposit to buy a house.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about intention, I know it sounds a bit wooey, but believe me, this stuff, I nearly swore then, this stuff really works. Because what it is such a powerful belief that you literally just make shit happen, basically.
Yeah.
And within that 6 years, we were gifted an unexpected large sum of money. So not only did we put the deposit down on the house, we had a kitchen renewed, we had a £15,000 office built at the end of the garden, and we still had £40,000 left in our bank
Wow.
in 6 years. And yeah, so and it was just there was some work there. That was when I first started working as a personal trainer. So at one point I was doing 2 jobs. So that's the first thing, is like, be prepared to do what needs to be done.
Hmm.
Don't sit and wait for the genie to come along and give you the lamp to rub. If the first thing you can do is just go and have a look at where are you spending unnecessary money now on things that are not creating anything better for your future. You know, it sounds silly, but just, gym memberships that you're not using, or any kind of, there's so many people out there that have got direct debits going out that they don't even know about, or they've
Hmm.
forgotten about. That adds up over a period of time. So go sort out, actually look at your finances now and say, where are you wasting stuff that could be put to better use? That's the first thing, really.
Yeah.
um and have, again, it sounds silly, but have a savings plan. So if you don't have a budget right now and you're just spending willy-nilly, and this future investment is important to you, then have a budget. Decide. That's what me and my husband, when we were first blacklisted, we were in a £2,000 overdraft every month. We never got above zero.
Hmm.
And logically, there was no way for us to get out of that. But because we decided that that was not going to be our life, we sort of made things happen. And that's how the extra job came along. So I think you've got to make it important for yourself as well, and you've got to believe it's possible. You've
Yeah.
got to believe that this might be your current reality, but actually things can change on a sixpence if you give yourself that intention. So where money isn't currently being used. And something that was really interesting that I heard on a training earlier this week is, we all hear about ROI, but what about the cost of inaction? So if you don't prioritize sorting out your budget, getting an investment, getting a loan or whatever to have this 30 grand to invest in your future, what might it cost you if you don't do that?
Mm.
So is it going to impact your family? Will you have less of a pension? Will you be struggling financially when you get older? Will your kids do your kids miss out on having a private education? Whatever it is that your motivation is to make that money, you need to make that enough of a driver to say, I'll do what I need to do to get that 30,000. And obviously get
Yes.
expert help from people like you, clearly.
Yes, definitely. And for property investors, that's often referred to as opportunity cost,
Hmm. Yeah.
because, that's what is the cost of missing out on that opportunity,
Hmm.
or what is it? And
Yeah.
that can be something huge. And it also doesn't need to be massive tweaks either.
Yep. No, not at all. And again, I truly believe that the tweak comes from making new decisions first.
Mhm.
So, there's always a fear, isn't there? When we invest, there's always a fear.
Yeah.
As a coach, when people sort of get on a conversation with me and then they're looking to invest and they want me to go, I can absolutely guarantee that in 7 months you'll be making a ton load of money, you'll be the master of your mind, and you'll have the most amazing life.
Yeah.
Well, can't guarantee you that, because if you don't do the work, there is no guarantee. So I remember a coach once saying to me, there's two reasons why you're not investing. Either one, you don't trust me and the process that I'm offering, but it's more likely that you don't trust yourself to do the work.
Yeah.
And that was like a slap around the face, because she was absolutely right. I didn't trust, from my past experience, I didn't trust myself to follow through on what needed to be done to get where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to say, what if I'm going to make this work? Where do I need to change? What do I need to do to get that investment back? And you make that the decision. I've made two huge investments in my business in the last 6 months, and when I made those decisions that I was going to do that, my internal head conversation was, I will get that investment back within a week, and I did. I
Wow.
just set the intention. I put the ball rollings that I would get that investment back, and because that was just a decision. If I'm going to invest that heavily, I will. This is what I say to my clients: you need to be the person that you need to be to do the things that you need to do to have the things that you want to have.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. That's a big mindset shift as well. Huge
It
mindset
is.
shift.
It is, because, but once you know that you're not thinking that way,
Mhm.
you now choose to think that way, and of course it's hard, but it just depends what you want. And I think if you want things bad enough, you'll find a way. And there's always that thing people say, if somebody in your family needed that amount of money for a life-saving operation, you would find that money.
Yes.
So why don't you put that same emphasis on having the most amazing life for yourself right now, and go work that money out? So make those tweaks, cut those things out, set a budget. Um, you know, get a second job if you need to. If in a few years' time it's going to reap the rewards. I think it's about being prepared to make some sacrifices and not expect it all just to be given to you on a plate.
Yeah. Well, that's it. You have to make life changes in order for this to happen. But when you
Hmm.
do make those life changes, even the small little things add up.
It is, it's true. And then for me, it's that the cumulative effects. Once you've started, and you get going and you see the results, it gives you a little bit more confidence, and you'll take bigger action, and then you'll get bigger results, and it's like that ever increasing circle. But I think it's very naive of us to expect to experience a massive change without fear. We need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and
Mm.
change our actions to suit our desires.
Yes, I love that. So we do need to get scared. We do need to feel
Hmm.
that fear, but we still have to do it. You can't let fear
Abs-
hold you back.
Absolutely not. I mean, I was on a course on Tuesday, and we were talking about fear. So ultimately, fear is just, we're not fearful. What we're scared of is feeling emotionally uncomfortable. So if it means for a year you haven't got money to go out and, I don't know, go out for dinner every week, or go buy yourself clothes every month, or whatever,
Mhm.
there's a loss pain associated with that. So I fear what I might lose, and it could
Mhm.
be anything from like that night out to, if I get really rich. Funnily enough, one of the big things around money is, if I get really rich, then my friends won't like me.
Oh.
And yeah, so people will hold themselves back because their fear of rejection when they get successful. It's a huge thing. There's the fear of the process. So, is this going to be really hard for me? Because I don't really know that if I'm made out for that. I don't know if I can start looking at my figures and being all like interested in money, because I've never done that before. And
Mhm.
then there's the fear of, what if I do all this and it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
So
That's my biggest fear all the
yeah,
time.
well, we all have that,
Yeah.
right? Even if it's like, going on a date with a hot guy, and and then you decide, okay, we're going to go on another date, and then at any point you could get dumped,
Mm,
but you might as well enjoy it while you're there.
true.
Just saying.
Yes. So, final question for you. Um,
Yes.
how can, as a key takeaway for my listeners, how can you fall in love with this money journey that you inevitably have to now go on for the rest of your life? It's not as if
Hmm.
we can take money out of the equation.
Yeah.
What can we do to set ourselves up?
Okay, so I wrote some notes for this one.
Mhm.
I think the first thing is that we need, and it's going to sound a little bit counterintuitive, but we need to detach from it being about the money. Because if we make it all about the money, we are so absorbed in it, we can get sidetracked from everything else.
Yeah.
And from an energy point of view, and that slightly more energetic side of it, that's a really, really nasty energy to be in. It's just not good for your physical, mental, or emotional health. So I think the first thing is to not make it all about the money,
Mhm.
and start to just detach a little bit from it. The second thing is to not make it a personal thing. So don't make money anything to do with you, as in, you're not more or less deserving than somebody else. You're not more likely or less likely to have £1 million or £1 billion than somebody else. Money is just paper that's printed in a factory. That's it. Well, I think
Mhm.
it's plastic now, isn't it? But
Yeah.
um, it could be potatoes for somebody else. It's just we make it a thing because of that subconscious programming.
Mhm.
So what we need to see money as doing is money is the fuel to the fire of that life that you want. So if you love traveling, if you want private healthcare, if you'd like a pension when you're 60 or 70, because I'm sure we'd all like that, because there probably
Mhm.
won't be one available to us, then money makes that happen. Money gives you the chance to have experiences that you can't have without money. It's really just bringing it down to basics.
Yeah.
And as you start having that conversation with yourself, you'll start to hear the counter voice. So he or she might say things like, well, that's just crap. So I encourage my clients to have little conversations with themselves, to dig deep into, okay, so what is underlying all that? And
Mhm.
it might be, it's not available for people like me, or it's too hard, or I can't see a way, because they're so just trained to see it as you go to a job, you work hard, you make money, you come home, because that's all that's been, created. So we've got to sort of see money as a pathway to something else.
Yeah.
So, and if people need to imagine it as potatoes, imagine it's potatoes, because there's so many pictures ingrained in your brain around money, that every time you think about money, these pictures unconsciously are playing around in your head. So you kind of need to detach that. Money is just money, simple as that, nothing more, nothing less. And I think really just about improving our wealth consciousness. So reading books like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Barbara Stanley does some great books for women around money.
Mhm.
Jen Sincero. There's huge amounts of resources on YouTube for raising your wealth consciousness, and just getting to grips with money and investment and compound interest, all those things.
Yeah.
I'm much more around the money mindset rather than the actual figures, but it's still deciding to just see money as something that facilitates the life that you want to have,
Mhm.
and nothing more.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing on that as well is really letting go of any fear, because a lot of people don't realize it until they start talking about it. I think we mentioned it before. People don't like to talk about money.
No.
And we need to be courageously talking about money more, and basically not giving a crap if it offends somebody.
I like that.
Because if you're making, I'm not saying that you want to go around and be a complete ass and start telling everybody that you're a bum billionaire, because we're not interested in how much money you're earning. We are interested in you as a person.
Yeah.
But equally so, if you've had a really good month, or if you've just eaten at the most amazing restaurant, or if you just bought yourself the most incredible pair of shoes or a new car or whatever, we should really be able to just talk about that like it's normal,
Yeah.
rather than filtering it depending on who we're talking to.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting just to share a little story. So a couple of months ago, I bought myself a nice little 2-seater Mercedes, and I was actually really scared to put a picture of it on social media for fear of what my friends and family would say. So
Wow.
even this far along, because of my history of having been a single parent and da 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 da, and all that, well, where did she get that money from? And then I thought, Louise, you teach this stuff,
Yeah.
plaster it on social media, because that's an inspiration for somebody else who might be where I was, to say that you don't ever have to stay in those places.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. That's a great story.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Louise. I'm going to wrap this podcast up, but if anybody wants to find out more about you, where can they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn. My website is currently being rebuilt, but it will be at louisecartwright.com. And I'm on Facebook as Louise Cartwright as well. So they're probably the best places to come and find me.
Amazing. I'll put the links below as well.
Thank you.
So thank you, Louise, and thank you everybody for coming and listening today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and also give it a rating, a 5-star review, and let me know as well what you've enjoyed and what your key takeaways are. And if you want to come over and join my Facebook community, that's Property Investment Mastery, where we discuss everything to do with property investment, you can go to Facebook and type into the search bar Property Investment Mastery, or just click on the link that I put below. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today. I cannot wait to catch up with you again soon.